Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Dell Match Play DFS Tactics Show and Bracket Predictions. A lot to get into. It's going to be a fun show, fun evening. So, quick reminder that the Corrales Punta Cana full show is tomorrow night, Wednesday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern. That'll be the initial research, the data dive, and the DFS Tactics all in one show. So if you are thinking about wagering the Corrales, playing in DFS for the Corrales, make sure to tune in tomorrow night at the same time, 9 p.m. Eastern. So we've got a lot to get into, a lot of brackets to fill out, and DFS strategies to talk about. So let's get through this intro. All statistics tonight and every night are provided by FantasyNational.com. It's an amazing resource, especially in an event like this, where the lineup generator is predisposed to try and optimize your lineups to get the most players through the brackets and not what they say cannibalize your lineups. So it's simply the best tool out there. Go check them out. It is well worth the investment. In the description of the video, at least on YouTube, hopefully they're there in Twitch as well, are links to my social media, where I place my betting cards and any interesting research that I find throughout the week. In fact, tonight after the show, I'll be posting my betting card for the Dell Match Play. It'll be interesting. Some of the bets that I made before the pods were released have already basically gone up against each other, which is fantastic news. But anyway, so give me a follow at the links for social media, and you can see most of my all of my betting cards and the research that I do throughout the week. And also in the description of the YouTube video, there is an email to reach out to me if you want to be a part of bonus content. This includes things like bonus videos, my tournament fact sheet, which lists my favorite wagers, favorite pivots, favorite fades, 6K plays, and all that. So if you want to be a part of that content, reach out to the email in the YouTube video. And then lastly, chat is open. We are live. I want to hear from you all. I want a lot of interaction. I'm going to do my best to help you all with your lineups tonight. If there's any key players that you want to focus on, we can try to work a lineup around that so you don't cannibalize your lineup and have them get knocked out in the round of 16. Hopefully get them through the Elite Eight, Final Four, and all that stuff. So let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies, tactics, and fill out some brackets for the 2022 Dell Match Play. And we transition first off to Windfinder. And this is going to explain a whole lot of how my mixed condition model ended up turning out. So let me make sure I have chat going. Hopefully the audio and video is still working or working well. I know at least on the YouTube side, I had some comments and people jump in chat saying it was fine. So if you are watching from Twitch, first off, welcome. I have just started doing that this week. But let me know how the video quality, the audio quality is on Twitch, and also on YouTube if you're catching it and weren't here last night. Let me know how it's going on that end as well. But we start off at Windfinder, and we see that tomorrow looks to be fairly hectic in terms of wind. You've got a pretty steady 10 to 15 mile an hour sustained wind with gusts, into the 20s, which makes it fairly difficult, especially since this course is exposed, particularly around the turn. So the wind should be playing havoc, not a havoc. English is always my specialty. But Wednesday, tomorrow, looks to be fairly chaotic in terms of wind. Thursday, somewhat the same, especially during the main playing rounds. Now, early on, it looks to be fairly calm, gusty, but fairly calm in form of sustained. And then tailing off a little bit towards the end of the evening. Friday looks beautiful, 79, no wind. Friday looks like the day to really go out and score if there is a day to score. And then Saturday and Sunday look more of the same, especially Sunday, the semifinals and finals. So I wanted to make sure I brought Windfinder up. It will explain a lot of the mixed condition model moving in. So let's do that. Let's move into the mixed condition model. And I spent all week talking about easy. You have to get your opportunities, you have to make birdies, and you'll see that in the final mixed condition model, I don't have any strokes gained total for easy. In fact, I don't have any easy course metrics in the final data model. And while I intended to, part of this is due to Windfinder and seeing the wind forecast. I don't know how easy this course is going to play with that amount of wind. So instead, I bumped up the strokes gained total for moderate and windy in the final data model. I've put that at a full 15%. I really think that's going to play havoc, especially on a course that's really exposed. Like I said, I just don't think it's going to help matters or help the course play easy. I've put 5% in short courses, and this is just full disclosure on my end. The way the wind direction works on Windfinder, I don't know how that translates to on the course, whether it's into the wind, downwind, cross. I just don't know. So I only put it at 5% for the short course. If it turns out that they're all into the wind, short course probably wouldn't play because the course will play longer. So I did put 5% in short course metrics. The yardage still on the scorecard is 70, 100 yards, but the wind could change that. Then moving down, I have 15% in strokes gained approach. It is my preferred statistic. I looked through some of the results last year. Guys who were generally, best in proximity and hitting the greens are what's going to give you the most opportunities. So this combined with opportunities gained is what I really wanted to focus on, especially on strokes gained approach, windy conditions and all that. Putting, I was a little mixed on. I wanted to put 15% because putting in a match play format can cure a lot of ills. But I ended up with only 10%, and that's just because I kind of ran out of percent to put things in. At the same token, I mentioned opportunities gained. I only have 5%. I wanted to put that at 10, but I just kind of ran out of percent. But the main focus this week has been birdies are better. In a match play format where birdies usually win holes or maybe have them on the par fives, and that's where the birdies and the eagles come in. I really wanted to see who goes out and gets birdies or better in bunches. So I put that at 20%, the most important metric in the data model. And then I split 10% each between par threes, par fours, and par fives. And I mentioned last night in the Data Dive show that 3 of the 4 par threes will measure inside of this range. So instead of going strokes gained par 3, I focused in on this range of par 3s. At the same time, I mentioned in the Data Dive last night that all of the par 5s, all 3 of the par 5s, measure to this range. So I went ahead and put 10% in just the range of the par 5s. And then the par 4s, you have the short drivable, you have 4 from 350 to 400, 4 from 400 to 2 from 400 to 450, 4 from 450 to 500. So instead of trying to focus or narrow in on a range, I just put strokes gained par 4 since there are 11 of them this week. So with that, the end results for me in my data model rankings are Russell Henley, Scotty Sheffler, Joaquin Niemann, Victor Hovland, Justin Thomas are your top 5. John Rahm, Will Zalatoris, Colin Morkawa, Luke List, and Tom Hoagy round out the top 10 for me based on a pure analytical standpoint of just the numbers. And you can see all 3. Russell Henley, Scotty Sheffler, and Joaquin Niemann are all really top 15 in birdies or better, strokes gained total in the wind, and strokes gained approach. And you can see why Russell Henley rates out so well Number 1 in strokes gained approach, number 3 in birdies or better. Really, his worst stat is 24th out of 64. So he's still in the upper half, maybe even upper third in putting, and it's just putting on fast Bermuda. So, really like what I see from Russell Henley, although his results here at the match play, since it's moved to Austin Country Club, are not the greatest. So that's why you have to kind of balance the match play historical success and what the numbers are saying. So Russell Henley, number 1. Scotty Sheffler, no explanation needed. Last year's runner-up. He's already won twice this season. Number 1 in birdies or better. Number 2 in par 4. Number 2 in par 5 of the length here at Austin Country Club. Nothing really to be shocked here about. It's surprising he's only about 30th out of 64, so barely above field average in opportunities. It's a little weird for Sheffler. He's number 1 in birdies or better, but he doesn't give himself a lot of opportunities. So that means whenever he is giving himself the opportunities, he's cashing them in. So you got to like that. Neiman 3rd. Really like Neiman this week. A lot to like here. He's very good in the wind. Very good at birdies or better. Par 5 links are good, or elite to be fair. Par 3s are good. So a lot to like there with Neiman. So there's a look at the top 10. I don't want to go through too much of my rankings, especially since there is an added element of match play success to all of this, and I can't go just by my pure rankings. So let's take a look at the salary board and bring up the projected ownerships as I get through these tabs, bring chat back up. In the 10Ks, you have 7 players. John Rahm, Sheffler, Justin Thomas, Colin Morkawa, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantley, DJ, and that's it. Excuse me. So 7 players. And in this range, you've got the majority of the most owned players. You have the second most owned player is in the 9Ks. Other than that, everybody here is first, and then third through 7th. And there's one kind of outlier here. So the most projected owned player, Justin Thomas, at near 18%, makes a lot of sense. Very good at birdies or better. Number 1 in the wind in this field. Like every time with JT, it's about the putter. If he's got the putter going, he's going to be really, really difficult to beat. You got to like that he's number 1 in giving himself opportunities. He's cashing them in at a very good clip. His irons are really darn good. He's the best in the field at par 4s, and the par 5s of the length is very good. So a lot to like there with Justin Thomas. He is very chalky. The 3rd most projected owned player looks to be Patrick Cantley. I'd imagine a lot of that's with the pricing at the lower end of the 10Ks. But again, a lot to like here. His irons haven't been Patrick Cantley-like, slumping a little bit. But, I mean, it's an elite field. He's an elite level player, and he's had success in match play formats. So you can't count out Patrick Cantley. Let's see. Then you're coming down the ownership board. You got Sheffler and Rahm, DJ and Hovland. All of those players I mentioned specifically. Justin Thomas, 17.7, approaching 18%. You've got Cantley right at 17%. DJ and Hovland are at 15.5%, and those are the lowest of the. Those are 5th and 6th in the ownership projection. So the one player that is, I guess, a pivot for the area is Colin Morkawa. Hey, P, glad you could jump on. Abstaining from DFS this week. Yeah, it's an interesting week for DFS. It is a real focus on lineup optimization. You have to make sure your lineups give yourself a chance to where you're not knocking each other out in the group stage or the round of 16. Ideally, you would want to give yourself 6 chances of 8 to get to the quarterfinals. So DFS is fun in that regard because it's all about lineup optimization, but it is a very, very big challenge. Absolutely. I'll be curious to hear too much thinking. Well, one could argue that with you listening to me and me thinking, that is that's on you, because a lot of times when I think hard, my head hurts. I'd be curious to hear what kind of wagers you're thinking about firing off. I've got a couple. Everyone knows one of my FOMOs is playing, so I'll definitely have an outright on him. But I also fired off some top fours. And just my luck, when the pods got drawn, 2 of those top 4 bets are in the same pod. So good at listening. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Again, I always appreciate that you tune in. But let's move back here into the price board here. So the one player that's not getting as much love as the others, he's right at 11.5%, is Colin Morkawa. And this makes a lot of sense to me. Again, kind of like Justin Thomas, if the putter is bulky, he's going to struggle. Last year, Colin Morkawa really struggled at this event. I believe he went 0-2-1. And in just conceptually in my mind, this is a format that doesn't seem to fit Colin Morikawa's game. Colin Morikawa is very good in majors when it's very difficult. He needs pars to be really good. He's focusing on fairways. He's just a really precise player. And I could be very wrong. Maybe last year was an outlier and he ends up playing match play very well in his career. I mean, he is 5th in giving himself opportunities. He's 6th at cashing him in, so the numbers say that he should be good. I have my hesitations with Colin Warakala in a match play event. So I can completely understand why he is the pivot in the area. But he is at 11.5%. It's going to be really difficult for me to jump into Colin Morkawa using him a bunch because of what I just mentioned. I have my reservations for him only due to the format. So if I were to give my rankings of the 10Ks spitball here, I'd honestly have to go Sheffler because of the match play success, the current form. There's just a lot to like here. Yes, he is very expensive. And the one downside to Sheffler is he's in one of the 2 groups of death. But he's number 1 in my mind for the favorite of the tournament, even though he's number 2 in my rankings. I think he's the favorite for the tournament. So Sheffler would be number 1 for me in the 10Ks. Then probably Cantley, a lot of that predicated on the price. 2, 3 would probably be Justin Thomas. Then Hovland. Probably Rahm, then DJ. And I have Morikawa last, but yeah, I'm worried about Rahm, and I'll get to this when I start filling out my bracket. I got a little bit of worry with Rahm. That's why I have him so low in the 10Ks. That and the fact that he is so darn expensive. I didn't mean to do that. So there's my take on the 10Ks. Let's look at the 9s. You've got Daniel Berger, Xander, Brooks Koepka, Bryson, Hatton, Terrell Hatton, Paul Casey, and Louie Oosthazen. The number 2 projected owned player right behind Justin Thomas is in the 9Ks. It's Xander Schauffele. He has had some pretty good success in match play formats. His pod, I think, is one of the easier ones to get through. So that makes a whole lot of sense. It seems like people are jumping on the Xander train to have him get through the match play, or the pool play, the pod. You do have one big pivot in the area, probably can be guessed, but you also have Berger in here who's hovering at 14%. The numbers are great for him, but the match play results are not. He is 3-9 in his career in pool play here at Austin Country Club. You can see that a little bit here, 52nd in opportunities gained. He does not give himself a lot of opportunities, and he hasn't been cashing them in when he does get those opportunities. Berger is a lot like Colin Morkawa in the sense that when par is a very good score, Berger's going to be a lot better. So enough to like with Berger, but there's somebody else in that pod I really like, and we'll get to him later. But Berger's hovering at 14%. You've got Brooks at 11.5, Hatton at 12.5, Casey at 11.5. Casey and Oosthazen are in the same pod. And it looks like people are leaning more Casey than Louie, 11.5 to 10.5. To me, it's a coin flip. Yes, I have Louie rated quite a bit better than Paul Casey, but they both have a lot of success in the match play format, especially here at Austin Country Club. This is a real coin flip for me. I'm favoring Louie just because when he makes the knockout rounds, he generally tends to do better. So the one guy we haven't talked about is Bryson. He is sitting at 7.5%, a pure pivot. I am nowhere near Bryson. I believe it was on Twitter or somewhere that he has mentioned that he is, still not 100%, not going to go 100%. Anytime you hear that, I'm just out, especially on a format like match play, which should suit Bryson DeChambeau. Just because he can full send every single hole, and if he loses, so be it. Loses one hole. But I'm nowhere near Bryson this week, even at the true pivot range. I'm away from Bryson. So the 9Ks, I really like Louie. I like Terrell Hatton. He's in the same pod as Daniel Berger. Terrell Hatton loves the format, so I like Terrell Hatton a lot. I'm away from Bryson. It's going to be hard to get away from the Xander chalk, just because I think his pod's so easy. I'm just away from Bryson and a little bit away from Brooks, and a lot of that is due to what I perceive as value, lower in the price board and lower in ownership value. So there's a look at the 9Ks, 8s, Jordan Spieth, Billy Horschel, Fitzpatrick, Joaquin Niemann, Will Zalatoris, Shane Lowry, Sergio, Sungjae, Adam Scott, and Tommy Fleetwood. In this range, you have one true pivot and then a lot of middling used guys. So when your fellow contestants are moving down into the 8Ks, they are grouping probably two of these, and they're kind of splitting a lot of this ownership, save this one true pivot. And that true pivot is Sungjae. And I've spoken to it with Daniel Berger, and I've mentioned the highlights for other players. Justin Thomas first in opportunities, sixth in cashing them in, John Rahm third, even Hovland eighth and second. I mentioned it with Scotty Sheffler a bit. The knock on Sungjae is that he does not give himself a lot of opportunities, and he has not been cashing in those opportunities when he gets them. That is a big issue in match play. So the analytical community, at least per Fantasy National, those members are shying away from Sungjae, and I would tend to agree. The one saving grace for him is he is number one in the wind, and with the wind as volatile as it looks, and P, if you just got in when you joined chat, make sure you jump and look at the beginning of the show. I started all this with Windfinder, and it's hectic. It should be interesting, especially since the course is pretty exposed. But the one saving grace for Sungjae is that he is number one in the wind, plays par fours pretty darn well. He's okay at short courses, but he's in the pod with Patrick Cantley, who is just solid all around. Cantley's irons have not been as strong as what you would think maybe for Patrick Cantley, but at the same time, Sungjae, he's under field average, so there's not a lot to like here with Sungjae. Otherwise, again, Spieth is getting a little less love than the others. Fitzpatrick is getting a little less love than others. Fitzpatrick completely makes sense. He's in that group of death with Sheffler, Fleetwood, who's at 8,000, and Ian Poulter, Mr. Match Play himself. So that group is very, very strong. It's going to be, to me, it's pretty difficult to pick a winner in that group. I'm going to have to try to by the time bracket predictions come out, but it's going to be difficult. So in the 8Ks, I like Billy Horschel. Obvious things. I mean, he loves the format. Defending champion. He's got a lot going for him. He cashes in his birdies are better when he gets the opportunities. The par fours are really good. We're on fast Bermuda greens. Bermuda, Billy Horschel, peanut butter and jelly. The par threes, good. Now the irons look like they've been bad. They've actually gotten better. So there's a lot to like with Billy Horschel. I love Joaquin Niemann this week. I really like Will Zalatoris this week. Both of those guys are hovering right at 12.5%. So not a pivot, not a fade, not chalky, just guys that are getting used. And I love those two plays this week. Shane Lowry is also getting some love at just over 12.5%. His record in match play at Austin Country Club is atrocious. It's like 2-7-3. So Lowry is a pretty big fade for me, even though he does play the wind pretty well. I'm just not there on Lowry. Let's see, elsewhere, Sergio getting a lot of love. I think he's the favorite in his pod. He's in with Colin Morkawa. I spoke to my hesitations on Colin Morkawa. Sergio's the exact opposite. He's the only player in the field with double-digit wins in pool play. At least at Austin Country Club, he's 10-4-1. Spaniards love to compete. Whatever narrative you want to use, I think Sergio's the favorite in his pod. But he's not getting as much use as I thought. He's only at just under 12.5%. So lots to like here with Sergio. I know he doesn't rate out well in the model, but that's just because of a pure numbers standpoint. He definitely gets a boost with the match play success. So there's a look at the 8Ks. Love Neiman, love Zalatoris. You gotta like Sergio for past success. I like Tommy Fleetwood. It's just he's in the group of death with Fitzpatrick and Sheffler and Poulter. So moving to the high sevens, Russell Henley, number one player in my model. All on strokes gained approach. Birdies are better. Lots to like with Henley. So Russell Henley, Alex Noren, Tony Finau, Max Homa, Taylor Gooch, Brian Harmon, Kevin Kisner, Mark Leishman, and Patrick Reed. Like I said, with Ian Poulter, Mr. Match Play, he's Mr. Euro Match Play. Patrick Reed is Mr. He's Captain America for a reason. Number one on fast Bermuda greens. His par 3 scoring has been very good. But otherwise, he's been struggling. He's been struggling a lot. So in a group with John Rahm and another player who I really, really like lower on in the price board, I'm kind of away from Patrick Reed. And it seems like others are as well. He is sitting at 5.5%. So he's a true pivot in the area. You've got Tony Finau's at 5%, a little bit under it, to be honest. His pod is extremely easy. It's him and Xander and two players that have not played in match play, Cameron Tringali and Sepp Straka. If you want to get away from the Xander chalk, Tony Finau is right there for you. Apologies, I keep looking over for projected ownerships and minimizing chat. Elsewhere in the high sevens, I love Alex Noren, but he's in the second group of death. It's Noren and Casey and Louie Oosthazen. Noren's 8-1 in pool play at Austin Country Club. I believe the only year he did not go 3-0, he went 2-1 and got beat in a playoff. Alex Noren loves this event. There's a lot to like with him. The par 3s, the irons have been playing well. He's good enough in the wind, putting. I really like Alex Noren. I was really hoping he would be a sleeper. He gets joined in with two others that are very good at match play in a group of death. It's going to be difficult for Noren. He is sitting at 14.5%, so people are still believing. I'm a little gun shy, especially when you get Louie and Paul Casey at 4.3 3 and 4% less the ownership. Kevin Kisner, another match play stalwart, he's sitting at 12%. So in this area, you've got a couple of pure pivots, like I mentioned. You've got Patrick Reed, 5.5. Tony Finau's under 5. Leishman is at 9%. His pod's a little interesting with Spieth and I think he's in Justin Thomas's. I think it's Justin Thomas, Luke List, Kisner, and Mark Leishman. So, I mean, you've got one of the stalwarts of match play. You got Justin Thomas. Luke List has been playing well. Leishman's in for a tough time, even though he's had success in match play formats. The biggest use in the high sevens is Russell Henley at 15%. So at least members of Fantasy National are seeing the same thing I'm seeing, despite the lack of success in match play formats. The numbers say he should be good. I don't know if they have him number 1 in their data models, but it looks like a lot of people are keying in on Russell Henley. So all the others in here, I mentioned Norn's ownership, Russell Henley at 15%. Everybody else is generally middling in ownership unless I highlighted them as being a pivot. Low sevens, you've got Kokrak, Webb Simpson, Corey Connors, Robert McIntyre, Bubba, Christian Bezadenhout, Keith Mitchell, Siwoo, Cameron Young, and Sepp Straka. In this range in the low sevens, you've got one player who's getting a lot of use. It's the same player that I'm looking at. It is Cameron Young. He is a pure unknown. He has been playing some fantastic golf for obvious statements are obvious. He's runner-up at the Genesis. Where'd he go? He's at 7,000. I mean, we'll just take a quick look at Cameron Young. I mean, he's been very good on Bermuda. Now, he is supposedly struggling in the wind, but it's hard to combine an off-the-tee game with the putter. The irons have been very volatile. I don't think he's 5 strokes positive every time, but I do not see him being this bad. I think he's field average or better. He's certainly not this. He's certainly not the Fortinet, the U.S. Open, the Farmers. He lost strokes on putting, but still top 20 with his iron play. Genesis, the Honda, he gained close to 3, finished in the top 20. So I think he's more akin to this kind of iron performances, maybe gaining 1 stroke on his approaches. I don't think he is the player's iron player from that week, the Phoenix. So there's a lot to like with Cameron Young. He's a pure unknown. So if you're wanting to fade the ROM chalk, Cameron Young is somebody to look at. So in the 7Ks, like I mentioned, I like Cameron Young. Bubba Watson's a match play stalwart. Webb Simpson, because of the pod he's in with Brian Harman and Bubba Watson, I'm kind of off of Webb Simpson because he's in the pod with Abraham Answer. So those are the 4 in that one. That one is not necessarily a group of death. It's just very, to me, it's very difficult to differentiate between the 2 or between the 4. This course should suit Abraham Answer. He's pretty good in the wind, I think. I'm going to cheat, come back up here. Answer. Nope. It says he's not. I would think he would be good in the wind. So the course suits Answer, I would think. Harman and Bubba Watson love match play format. So Webb's in this kind of awkward spot. Not that he's, bad player for this format. He's just in an awkward spot due to the pod he's in. So Cameron Young, I mentioned, is at 12%. Everybody else is a pivot by overall contest standards. The next highest use in this range is Webb Simpson at 10%. But it looks like contestants are just ignoring the low sevens except for Cameron Young. It looks like they're just ignoring. So if you find somebody that you like in this range, there is a lot of leverage to be gained. You just have to bank on them progressing out of the group and then ideally winning their round of 16 matchup with whoever pod they're up against. So if you like somebody, make sure you highlight them in the low sevens because you'll be gaining a lot of leverage, except for Cameron Young because he's chalky. In the 6Ks, there is one player getting a whole lot of use. That's Tom Hoagy at 14.5%. He has never played match play events, so it'll be interesting to see. He's kind of like Cameron Young in that respect. Very good on short courses, gives himself a lot of opportunities, cashes them in. Fourth in irons, fourth in par fours. I love Tom Hoagy this week. I'm going to be using Tom Hoagy. I can't get off of that chalk. And I like the pod that he's in as well. Everyone else in the 6Ks is a pure pivot. So I'm going to throw two names out at you. I'm going to highlight Luke List. He has been playing some fantastic golf now. The putter, just like everybody else, is going to be very bulky. But he's in the same group with Justin Thomas, who we said the same thing. He's in the pod with Kevin Kisner, who is all about putting, but is, where'd he go? He's up here. He is all about putting, second, but his irons haven't been the greatest. He does not give himself a lot of opportunities. Fairly mediocre whenever he gets them. He's just a match play stalwart. So there is a non-zero chance Luke List could get out of that pod, especially if the putter is rolling like it was at the Farmers. So I wanted to highlight him. And the other one I'm going to highlight for you is Eric Van Royen. Now he is in Brooks Koepka's pod. Eric Van Royen made it to the knockout rounds last year. So it's one tournament, sample size issues, all that stuff. I understand it, but his irons have been very good. He gives himself a fair number of opportunities. He's not great in the wind, so I don't know. It's just a name to consider, especially because I'll throw this nugget out at you right now. The number one seeds of their pod, so the 1 through 16 players, only one of them made it out of the pod stage or the pool play last year. Only one of the 16. That was by far the lowest. Generally, it's about 5 or 6, but it's not all that common that the top seed makes it through. So you're going to have to find other guys, and Van Royen, who having made the pool play or having made the knockout rounds last year, advancing out of pool play at 6,500, is a name to consider. So there is a look at my rankings at least, but let's move on over to Microsoft Excel, and I'm going to bring up my rankings, and let's try to generate some lineups here for you all as I try to toggle through all these tabs, bring chat back up. Let's try to build a few lineups here. And again, it's so very, very important that you don't, I hate to use the term because everybody uses it, but cannibalize. You cannot knock your own lineup out. You can't be using the same players in the same pod, and you really want to try to avoid pods that match up against each other. So let's try to figure out some of these lineups that contestants are using. Sorry, one more time, get chat. So let me sort this by price. That'll make it a whole lot easier for me. In the 10Ks, we're just going to use the most common player that's being played, the most projected element. It's Justin Thomas, and you'll notice here that he is in pod 6, and I will scroll over for you so you can see the lineups. Okay, I believe you can see the pod as well. So Justin Thomas, that is where a lot of people are starting. It looks like he's the most projected owned player. Being in pod 6, he'll play against pod 11, which is Jordan Spieth, Adam Scott, Justin Rose, and I can't remember the fourth one offhand, but a lot of people are going with Justin Thomas, so it seems like they're going to be avoiding the pod 11. And speaking to pods, Tom Hoagy is getting a lot of love at the bottom. He is in pod 12. That is the pod with Who is the 12 seed? Is that Horschel? I think that might be Horschel. So they're banking on Hoagy beating out Horschel in that pod. And pod 12 would face pod 5, which is Patrick Cantley's 4. Who is 5? I can't remember. We can check here in a bit. But they would be ideally leaving or not using anybody from pod 5. So these two players are on complete opposite ends of the bracket. So they wouldn't be matched up until they reach the final if they get there. So that's why a lot of people are setting their boundaries at this. And then Cameron Young is getting a whole lot of love too. They are banking on him beating John Rahm. He is sitting in the first pod. So the first pod would play pod 16, which is Brooks's pod. So Young and Hoagy would meet each other in the quarterfinals. So from here, it's kind of So from here, you have some options. You could go probably a 9K. It's let's see, who are we? I guess Xander. He is getting a whole lot of love as the second most projected owned. He's in pod 7, so he would be at the bottom right corner. Pod 7 would play pod 10. So right now you have the 4, I'll call them quadrants, covered. You've got the top right in Justin Thomas, the bottom right, top left, and actually that's top left as well. Because the 1, 16, 8, 9 are in one quadrant. So then it would be the 4, 5, 12, and 13. So yes, sorry, I had to think about that for a second. All 4 of these players are in the different quadrants. So Cameron Young's in the top right, or top left, excuse me. Tom Hoagy's in the bottom left, bottom right, and top right. So this is their defined boundaries by price, and also the way they're trying to get as good of a chance of getting 6-6 through to the quarterfinals. So then from here, they're just probably filling out either somebody they're not as confident in one of these pods or quadrants, or they are trying to find their uniqueness, because we're only 4 players in and you're already matching over 10% of your fellow contestants. That's really damn chalky. But otherwise, they might be coming down into, let's see, Alex Noren. He's getting a whole lot of love at 78. And that leaves them with 8,100, who is Adam Scott. He's not getting a whole lot of play. 8,000 is Tommy Fleetwood. Russell Henley at 79. So, you've got different pods here that ideally would be you have a chance to get 6-6 through to the quarterfinals, and you're matching at 15%. That's all. That was kind of a look at a somewhat balanced team. If you are watching, by all means, please jump in chat. I want to help you all build lineups that will prevent yourself from knocking each player out early on. Particularly, you want to stay away from players in the same pod, and ideally you would not match up in the round of 16 either. But I'll give you a couple of players and or lineups that I've been kind of toying around with. Probably not going to be in price order, but I've been building more of a balanced lineup, to be honest with you. I really like Louie Oosthazen, and he's in pod 10. Yes, it's part of the group of death, or second group of death. It's Paul Casey, Alex Noren, Corey Connors, and Louie. A lot of people are gravitating towards Alex Noren, probably for the price. I understand why. But I like Louie. He's got so much success here at Austin Country Club. He did go 0-3 last year, but it was the first time he didn't win his pod, I believe. Or at least he had been 3 for 4 before that. So I really like Louie. Somebody else I really like, I think he's the clear favorite in his pod, is Sergio. That is absolutely not his pod. He is not in pod 43. Sergio's in pod 2 with Colin Morkawa. And again, as I went through the price board, I gave you the reasons why I'm hesitant on Colin Morkawa. Sergio's in there, loves match play, so I really like Sergio at 83. If I am trying to go into the upper echelon of prices, I'm avoiding Colin Morkawa, obviously. I'm actually avoiding Justin Thomas. There's a lot of players I like in that area, including Luke List, and he's saving a whole lot of money for me in pod 6. So this is the top right taken care of. Unfortunately, both of these players are in the bottom right, so now I'm trying to go find some players in the left-hand side of the bracket. I really like Terrell Hatton in his pod. He's in the same pod as Daniel Berger. Berger's struggles in match play are well noted, 3 and 9. Terrell Hatton loves the format. He's been playing well. I like Terrell Hatton quite a bit, so he's got the bottom left covered. A lot of players are going Cameron Young in the top left in pod 1. Yeah, I like it. It's not, it's nothing to... it's definitely something to consider, but since he is fairly chalky, I'm probably going to go with Scotty Sheffler, even though he's in the group of death, and that doesn't leave me with a whole lot. But Sheffler is somebody else I've been kind of working towards. He would be in the bottom left as well. Let's see, somebody else in the mid-range. Let's see. You've got, sorry, I'm trying to think of the pods and the players in them. Tom Hoagy's getting a lot of love. I really like Tom Hoagy. Somebody else in the same pod as Patrick Cantley and Sungjae is Seamus Power. He has never played match play, so it'll be interesting to see how he takes to the format. There's enough to like with Seamus. He has not played as well as he was at the end of the summer last year and certainly into the fall. But Seamus is starting to come around. I like Seamus. In fact, we'll come over here and take a quick look. He's at 6,700. Seamus. There he is. So birdies are better, 18th. Opportunities gained, 23rd. He's the best in the field on short courses. Top 30 in the par 5s, top 30 in the par 4s. He's okay in the wind. Again, when you're coming down into the 6Ks, you're going to have to accept some flaws and take some risks. I like Seamus Power this week. I think he has a decent chance to get out of the Patrick Cantley pod. And again, this is 10,400 if I am comfortable using Luke List and Seamus Power. 10.3 is Hovland. I won't use Cantley if I'm using Seamus Power, but 10.3 is Victor, and he's in the third. So this gives me the 4 quadrants covered. It's the kind of lineup that I've been gravitating towards. I like Neiman. He's in pod 14. So let's see, other players. I think, is Will Zalatoris in that same? No, Will Zalatoris is in Victor Hovland's in 3, so I believe these two would match up in the round of 16. Ideally, you wouldn't want to put those two on the same team, but one of the two is a pretty darn good value play in the mid-8s. I like both of their chances to move out of their pod. But let's get to at least the fun portion for me and fill out a bracket. And again, this is what I think will truly happen. This is not a playing the pivots or fading guys. This is what I truly think will happen. So let's have some fun here. And in the comments, let me know your bracket or where you think I fucked up, because it'll happen quite a bit. I mean, I might not get any of these right, but that's the fun of doing a bracket, right? It's March Madness. So in the true theme of March Madness, I have got Cameron Young, or Yumph, as he's now known. I've got Cameron Young upsetting John Rahm in pod 1. I just like what Cameron Young brings to the table as far as opportunities. He's been playing well. And the reason I'm so cautious with Jon Rahm, yes, all of these players can have their putting woes, but Jon Rahm is struggling with the putter. He really is. I know you won't be able to see it, but I'm going to bring up his tab on Fantasy National. And in the past 5 events, he has lost 1.5 stroke on the green per tournament, including losing strokes in the past 4 tournaments. He lost 1 at the Players, he lost 4 at the Arnold Palmer, 2.5 at the Genesis, and 2.5 at the Phoenix. Now, all of those finishes are still, with the exception of the Players, all of those finishes are still top 20s. Phoenix, he was 10th. Arnold Palmer, he was 17th. Genesis was 21st, so top 25. The Players wasn't very good, but he has got some putting issues going on right now. And in a format like match play, sometimes a bad putter just can't save you. It just can't. Sometimes you just have to make a putt to have a hole or to continue a match. It is what it is, and Jon Rahm has not been making a lot of putts. So I've got Cameron Young moving on. And in the same vein as I was mentioning earlier that only 1 top seed advanced last year from the pod stage or the pool play, one of the first things that I do is try to eliminate or figure out the vulnerable 1 seeds. Well, for me, Brooks was one of the first. For me, yes, he's got some decent success, but if you look at the rest of his pod, Shane Lowry, not good here at Austin Country Club in the past. Harold Varner's a bit of an unknown, so I'm actually going to go Eric Van Rooyen in pod 16. He beat who was his pod last year? I wanted to say it was DJ, but I think it might have been Bobby McIntyre that was in DJ's. Eric Van Rooyen pulled off an upset and won his pod last year unexpectedly. So he's already shown he can do it. We saw that the irons have been very good lately. I like Eric Van Rooyen as a chance. I think he really has a strong chance. In pod 8, there's not a lot to like here. I'm never going to use Mr. Kick Me in the Nuts. Homa played well last year. Now, Mackenzie Hughes, the one time he played, he made it to the knockout rounds. But it's Dustin Johnson, former champion of this event. I'm going to take Dustin Johnson in this pod. I think Bryson is a clear, vulnerable top seed, especially since he admits that he's not going 100%, isn't 100%. If you want to go with match play experience, it's obviously Lee Westwood. But I'm going to go with Taylor Gooch. In a format where you are all or nothing, Gooch can just send it. And fairways be damned. When he hits fairways, he's really, really darn good. Now, he doesn't hit enough in stroke play to be elite. But in a format like match play, now his one trip was not good last year. I think he'll learn on that experience. I like Taylor Gooch. Kind of by default. I'm fading, or not fading, but I'm away from Bryson. Richard Bland's a pure unknown, and I will never pick a guy that I purely don't know. Richard Bland, Minwoo Lee, Takumi Kanaya over here. I just won't pick players that I don't know, and I could be wrong. But so for me, it came down to Taylor Gooch versus Lee Westwood. I'll go with Taylor Gooch. The first group of death: Scotty Sheffler, Fitzpatrick, Poulter, and Fleetwood. This is a very, very, very difficult pool for me to try to figure out. Scotty Sheffler, the runner-up last year. Ian Poulter, Mr. Match Play. I think if I had to eliminate one quickly, it'd be Fitzpatrick, and he's not bad. He's just 6-9, so he can go out and win, but he also will lose. He doesn't have a lot of halves. This is going to surprise some people. I'm actually going to go with Tommy Fleetwood in pod 5. It's a gut feeling. I can't give you anything more than that. Scheffler is probably the right call. Would not blame you one bit if you picked Poulter. I'm going Fleetwood. It's a gut feeling. That's what I got for you. Pod 12 To me, it's Billy Horschel. If I'm going by what I think will happen now in DFS, I really like Hoagy for the chance to beat Horschel and advance. But if I'm going by what I truly think will happen, it's Billy Horschel. In Pod 4, I mentioned how I like power in DFS. Cantley's probably the obvious choice, but I'm actually going to go Sungjae M. Yes, opportunities not very good. He hasn't been cashing them in when he gets those opportunities. I think something clicks for him this week. While Tommy Fleetwood is a pure gut feeling, Sungjae at least has the narrative of being very good in the wind, and if the wind really does play havoc, like I think it will, Sungjae is the best in the field at it, or in it. So I like Sungjae's chances given that narrative. I'm very well comfortable marking this as red or orange highlighter or wrong right off the bat, but this is the one where I'm kind of taking a chance. In Pod 13, I like Terrell Hatton a lot. 6-4-2, the same record as Fleetwood, but Berger, his struggles have been well documented in match play. Siwoo, 3-6-3. I don't know. I'm just not there with Siwoo. The Zadenhout, while it's a short course, I'm just not there with him either. So for me, it's kind of Terrell Hatton there. I'm going to go to the other side and fill out the end of the round of 16. In Pod 6, I mentioned Luke List for DFS. I really like the way he's been playing Justin Thomas, but for me, it's Kevin Kisner. He just loves match play. He's a grinder. You're going to hear the term bulldog. He won't give up. He's kind of like Terrell Hatton in that regard. He just won't give up. I got Kisner. In Pod 11, you've got some pretty big names in golf, and Jordan Spieth, 9-3-3. Adam Scott doesn't play this event very often. He was 1-1-1 when he did play it. Justin Rose, 3-1-2. I'm going to go with a pure shocker, kind of like Eric Van Rooyen. I'm actually going to go with Keegan Bradley. I like where his irons are. The putter, as long as the putter is anywhere near field average, Keegan has a really, really good chance. And you're always going to have one pod that doesn't go as expected. I am choosing this one as the one that doesn't go as expected. So, kind of like Sungjae, I'm almost willing to write or highlight this in orange or red or whatever, mark it wrong. But gonna take a flyer on Keegan. I kind of like where his game's at. Pod 3, kind of a two-man pod in my eyes between Hovland and Zalatoris. I'll go Zalatoris. He's been playing exceptional golf early on this PGA Tour season. You can't go wrong with either one. I'm choosing Zalatoris. Pod 14 is very interesting. Joaquin Niemann, I really like this week. Russell Henley, number 1 in my data model. If you want to go with prior match play experience, like Lee Westwood across the way, it would be Kevin Na. He has played this event pretty well. I'm going to go with the pure unknown. I'm going to go with Maverick McNeely. Very good player in the wind. His irons have been pretty good. I think McNeely, kind of like Keegan Bradley, I think could sneak up there, especially with the unknown of never played match play, or at least here in Austin. Pod 7, again, it's kind of like Pod 3 in my mind, a two-man race between Xander and Tony Finau. I'm going Xander. I think it's just it's set up pretty darn well for Xander there. Pod 10, the group of death. Normally, I would have gone Alex Noren. He's 8-1. Paul Casey, also a very good choice at 8-4-3. This is kind of like what I did with Matt Fitzpatrick. I eliminated Corey Connors, and simply because he was 0-3, like the irons are great, but I think Corey Connors is a clear fourth among these three. I'm going to go with Louie Oosthazen. He has had so much success here at Austin Country Club. He's made the knockout rounds 3 of the 4 years. Now, last year it was 0-3. I think that turns around this year. The game's been pretty good. I like Louie Oosthazen. I spoke to it all night, seemingly. I have my reservations with Colin Morkawa. Sergio, the most wins in this tournament in pool play. He's 10-4-1. I think Sergio's the clear favorite in his pool, in his pod. And then the coin flip for me, all 4 of these guys, I can see a narrative for them advancing. I'm going to go with the most experienced in match play, especially with success, and go Bubba, 7-3-5. Harmon makes a whole lot of sense. Answer has been 2-1-0 in both of his trips. He just has lost the playoff. And then Webb has historically struggled, although this is a course that should suit him. But I'm going to go Bubba Watson. So there's my round of 16. Now we'll come into the Elite 8 quarterfinals, however you want to call it. I'm going to go with Cameron Young again. Fresh off his upset of John Rahm. Eric Van Royen, while has been playing good, he's got enough reservations to make me a little gun-shy moving on. Dustin Johnson, Taylor Gooch. This one's a pretty clear Dustin Johnson for me. I think Taylor Gooch was the best in his pool by default, whereas I think DJ goes out and earns the pod. Then moving on, Fleetwood and Horschel. Horschel, the defending champion. Again, it's a gut feeling. I'm going to go with Tommy Fleetwood. He's been playing decent enough lately. Is a player that loves playing in the wind. Good in the format at 6-4-2. Again, this is a gut feeling. I kind of like Tommy Fleetwood this week. And then at the bottom, I mentioned Sung Jae and my reservations with him. I think he sneaks out over Cantley. I don't have him going any further than Terrell Hatton. Then the other side, Kisner and Bradley. Pretty easy for me here. Kevin Kisner, Mr. Match Play. I've said that about 2 or 3 guys, but another guy that loves match play, like Billy Horschel, like Sergio. I just got Kisner. Zalatoris and McNeely, I'm going by form coming in. I just got Zalatoris. I've been impressed with him all year long. In this round of 16, in this knockout, pretty good matchup, I would think. I'm going with the guy that has moved on several times in match play in the knockout rounds. I'll go with Louie. And then finally, 2 guys that love playing match play, and Sergio and Bubba. I'm going to go with Sergio. Now we've made it to the Elite 8 to go into the semifinals. Cameron Young and DJ. Cameron Young might be a little bit of a Cinderella, but the clock stops here. I'm going to go with DJ. 2 players that are quite speculative for me, Tommy and Terrell Hatton. I'm going with Terrell Hatton. Kisner and Zalatoris, you're not going to beat, in that matchup, I don't think you beat the match play experience of Kisner. Sergio and Louie, 2 players, again, very, very comfortable with match play. I'm going to go Sergio, but it's very, very close for me. And then we'll go to the semifinals. I'm going to go Terrell Hatton over DJ. Much like Tommy Fleetwood's a bit of a gut call. Johnson, generally when he makes it this far, goes to the finals, but he has lost in the semis 1 time. So I'm going to go with Terrell Hatton. And then on the other side, Sergio versus Kisner. I'll take Kisner. And my champion for the 2022 Dell Match Play, I'll put it in bold. I've got Terrell Hatton to win. And for those who are curious, I'll have Sergio to beat DJ in the 3rd place match. So there is my the calls official bracket for the 2022 Dell Match Play. So, guys, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate the support, Pete. Thanks for jumping in chat like you always do. Hopefully, you all have your lineups in. have submitted some brackets for, fun pools or fun challenges with your friends, family, or whatnot. Reminder, the Corrales Punta Cana full show is tomorrow, so I'll have all your DFS, your data, your outright wager information. I'll have that for you tomorrow. We'll cover all of that in time for Thursday morning's Corrales. So with that, for all of the wagers you have made at the Dell Match Play, for all of your DFS contests and any brackets that you filled out for the Dell Match Play, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Corrales full show, may all your bets be profitable.